Hey folks, Papa Boris here with Age 3 for the first 3-player game to finish in Stage 2 of the 2025 Through the Ages World Championship. You might be wondering, hey Boris, what's up with these 2-part videos? Are you gonna make a habit of doing 2 videos for every game? Have you ever considered maybe, I don't know, blabbing less? Did you ever try being less boring? Maybe if you talked less, it would finish in time. I don't generally want to make a habit of doing 2-part videos, but I thought this game was a good candidate for it because Age 3 was very close. It was like really close all throughout, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to do a kind of deep dive on how to make decisions in the third age. I'm not saying I played it perfectly or even well, but if nothing else, it's an illustration of my thought process going through the third age, and if you're a struggling player who seems to have a hard time navigating the sea of all the options in H3, hopefully this will help. So what I'm going to do here is try to pause right before everything starts, and let's take a look at my board. Right now, I have to make a choice. In fact, you could say that this is kind of the story of Age 3. Every single turn in Age 3, at least in some games, you have to make the choice. Capital T, capital C. Do you go for military or do you go for culture? Do you try to win the game just by turning your resources into more culture than your opponents can? Or do you have to try to steal the game by getting a big military lead and blowing out one of your opponents with a war over culture? In the case of a 3-player game, that would mean that you beat them just because you steal a bunch of culture from them, but then you also have to be close enough to the other player that the culture you gain is enough to beat them as well. So in this game, I have a number of advantages. I make way more rocks than my opponents. In fact, for the moment, I make more rocks than my opponents combined thanks to the Suez Canal. Food production were pretty equal. However, I have more tokens in my bank because I have all these colonies, many of which gave me yellow tokens. That's 6 extra yellow tokens from colonies. And I also have a hoard of food, which is relevant because that means essentially I have more stored energy, if you will, to get workers out. Culture-wise, I'm a little bit behind Nasty Michael, a little bit ahead Pepe, and our culture production is about equal. On the war front, I didn't get an Age 2 tactic. I only have 3 military actions. If I make military units, I draw fewer cards, which reduces the likelihood of getting a war over culture and also of getting tactics from Age 3, and also of drawing events that I'd want to play. Remember, every Age 3 event is 3 points just for playing it, and possibly a whole lot more if the conditions are beneficial to you versus to your opponents. So for this first round of Age 3, the choice for me was, let's just push culture. I have less actions than my opponents. Nasty Michael has 7, and Pepe has 7 as well. I only have 6, but I have a better resource production, so I figured just playing it straight and narrow, I can turn my resources into culture, catch up on this deficit I have against Nasty Michael, and expand my lead against Pepe. Again, this is a little bit of a narrative video. I'm just describing what I was thinking. Whether it was correct is going to be a matter of interest and, you know, an exercise left to the viewer. There are just, I think, a couple, 2 or 3 maybe, mistakes made by myself and my opponents that I think are worth pointing out. But aside from that, we're going to be kind of taking a narrative bent here. So since my choice is I want to, you know, just turn resources into points right here, we're going to take scientific method, research it, and upgrade both labs. That fixes my science, so now I can research texts like, you know, airplane military theory, or for example, I can do opera, maybe a government like democracy, and get culture that way. So I'm getting some science. For my last action, I grab the opera because opera gives me a way to turn science and rocks into points, and thus my turn is over. I also make a swordsman. The reason for this is that I know my opponents are clowns in this stage. They'll put anything into the deck, and frankly, if that sounds like I'm dismissing them, I'm not. It just seems like I'm probably too conservative putting events in. I was watching one of Wiedenbaum's videos. He's the person who got, I think, 3rd place in last year's tournament, so he's an extremely good player, and I was watching one of his games from the finals, so it was him against 3 other players, and there was all the garbage in that deck as well. They just put all the crap in there, so it seems like maybe that's just like a part of good play, is putting in terrible events, and then because you're the one who put it in and you know it's in there, you can prepare for it and get an advantage. I'm not a master of that. The point is, I know that these opponents, like strong players, are putting all kinds of garbage in here, and none of these events are mine, so unless this is a graphical glitch and one of them was mine, I beg your pardon if that's the case, but the point is, I don't know what those events are, or at least some of them. So I just want to make sure I'm not last. If I'm at 10, Nasty Michael plays an event, I'm last on tie breaks, but this way I'm actually second on tie breaks, and that can be a really big difference. So, swordsmen come up, I pass the turn. I draw two events, two good events actually, Impact of Science, which I am currently leading in, and Impact of Architecture, which is points per level of urban buildings, and none of us are particularly strong in that, but since I have the most rocks, I can get more high-level urban buildings faster than my opponents can, so both of those are good. All right, Nasty Michael is up. He plays Constitutional Monarchy with Breakthrough. He grabs the Revolutionary Idea for more science. He grabs some food. He upgrades this Iron Mine, upgrades another one. Takes Architecture to make urban buildings cheaper and to build wonders in multiple stages of a wonder in a single action, and he passes the turn. Then it's Pepe's turn. Pepe plays an event. It's age 2. And it's Iconoclasm! Now, Through the Ages has been around since like the late 2000s, and even in the olden days where the game was very different from the way it is now, there were a number of key rules changes. James Cook, to making a ton of culture and then being burned off by Iconoclasm, was like, you know, it's like one of my core memories. That was like the play, is James Cook dying to Iconoclasm. So this really was a kick in the nostalgia balls. I had my James Cook making 6 culture per turn from 5 colonies. He used to make 2 culture per colony, which would have been 10 culture per turn, which is, it was outrageous, and we all knew it was outrageous at the time. But here, still making 6 culture per turn, still very strong, better than almost any age 3 leader, and he's gone on the literal first opportunity it could possibly happen. Like, if Iconoclasm had been 1 card earlier, then it would have been triggered in age 2 and I would have been fine. If it was several cards later, I could have gotten, okay, at least another batch of 6 culture from him, but instead he goes at the first opportunity and I'm just crushed. So now I am way behind my opponents on culture because, you know, making 6 culture per turn or not is actually a huge difference. All right, so I'm just like salty and winding up a storm in my house when that happens. Pepe takes Marie Curie. A bit of an interesting leader here. So he currently gets nothing from her, but it's a very telegraphical move where it's obvious what he's planning to do. He wants these computers to wheel around to him and then upgrade to a top level lab, get 3 strength and 3 culture. And then he wants to get coal, which will give him another 2 science. He puts down Marie Curie because his current leader just died. He raises population, grabs some rocks. I will mention this as a mistake. He spent 2 actions to take these reserves, which is 2 actions to get 4 rocks. So that is 2 rocks per action. He could have researched coal, because he does have 8 science, and then played rich land to upgrade, using all of his rocks to make a coal. That would give him 2 rocks. So he could have spent 2 actions to get 2 rocks. Instead, he spent 2 actions to get 2 rocks twice with these reserves. But of course, he's going to have to research coal anyway, and had he done it this turn, he could have actually, you know, gotten 2 culture for Marie Curie and an extra 2 science production immediately. So he's not just giving up it's not just one of those, like, situations, like in this game, when he took a rich land A instead of building a mine. This is, or was it the last game, the 4-player game? Pepe did that in one game, I forget which one. It's not just that. It's not just that by taking reserves, you're giving up the immediate benefit of the rocks from coal. You're also giving up 2 culture and 2 science. So that was actually a bit of a blunder there. But anyway, he passes the turn, and it gets over to me. So now again, we have the decision. Also, I put Impact of Science in here, so I'm hoping to steal it. Obviously, Marie Curie is here, and with computers, I'm probably going to lose that event, but there's a chance that I can actually sneak that in while I still hold a tentative lead on culture, or on science generation. Impact of Architecture would have been the safer play, but I decided to go for winning those 14 points. Anyway, so I play the event. Before the other event pops out, let's talk again about capital T, capital C, the choice, okay? Now I'm suddenly way behind on culture. Can I still catch up and just win this game by converting resources into points? Well, all the same stuff is true that was true last time. I still didn't get a tactic, still don't have a war over culture. If I play military units spending my military actions, I am less likely to draw any of those key tactics or wars over culture. So my decision here is, again, keep going for culture. So what I do is I flip the event. Pepe and I each get a couple of rocks. I get the opera, and I make an opera. Now, I am going to be 1 rock short of being able to make a second opera, so I have to make some decisions about what to do with my actions, and there's quite a lot that could be done. I could take communism to generate more rocks and get more actions, and especially more military actions. Reserves is here. I could take movies to improve my operas later in preparation for either Charlie Chaplin or Ian Fleming. That's a possibility. computers is here. I could hate draft that from Pepe. There are only 2 computers in the deck. I don't really need computers, but this would be a safeguard. Having it as an option to research computers and upgrade these scientific methods into computers might let me keep my lead so I could win the impact of science. Unfortunately, yeah, this doesn't, you can't see what's been put into the deck, but I just put this impact of science into the deck, so it's a, it's a 14-point swing for Pepe to win it instead of me, because we switch places between these 14 and the 7. So it's a lot to consider. What I eventually decide to do is I raise population, I grab these reserves because rocks are good, and then I do take the computers. Not without some misgivings. It'd be nice to pay down my civil action debt and get 2 more workers out of the pool and put, 6 food, which is 3 blue tokens, back into the bank. But I decided to take the computers because now it's going to be harder for Pepe to get Marie Curie's science bonus online, which might increase my odds of getting Impact of Science, early when it flips during the game. Had I not put Impact of Science in there, I probably wouldn't have taken computers, which is maybe an argument that I shouldn't have put Impact of Science in there and played Impact of Agriculture or Architecture instead, so I could have used these last 2 actions to do something beneficial, like raising population twice, or hell, even upgrading my last mine. But in this case, I choose my last few rocks to make another swordsman. So I want to put pressure. There is kind of like the inverse of the Shadow Army. In the previous video, we talked about Shadow Army as like when you're behind on strength, and it's the strength you could get to try to get the military leader to not attack you. When you're the military leader yourself, the benefit of getting more strength is that it puts pressure on the opponent who has less strength, and so now they might be encouraged to be like, well, I was going to just spend all my rocks generating culture, but instead, because I'm a little bit vulnerable, I'll invest some resources into military instead, which doesn't do anything for your opponent. So it's kind of like you're spending resources yourself to maybe have a chance of reducing how many resources your opponents spend efficiently. If the inefficiency that is incurred by Lord Michael because he's afraid of my strength is worse for him than the military action and 3 rocks are for me, then that's a win. And same is true for Pepe, though I'm not beating Pepe by as much. And at the end of the day, this might be a helpful worker here. If there's a colony, I could use the warrior to win it. If I get a good tactic, this might actually help me fulfill the tactic, and so on. Okay, I pass the turn, and Nasty Michael is up. So he raises population with frugality, builds 1 stage of the Louvre. He plays the revolutionary to get some science, grabs democracy. He just loves using this Acropolis. He had monarchy, constitutional monarchy, and democracy. I'm not 100% sure that is great, but he plays the democracy now thanks to the Acropolis. He grabs movies so he can upgrade his dramas. He grabs modern infantry to fix his military, and then he just raises population because he has nothing better to do. And so now, if you look, you'll notice that he's got 9 culture to my 5, and he still hasn't gotten it for the turn yet. So he's actually got a significant lead. He builds a warrior, by the way, there. He's actually got a pretty significant lead on culture. So Pepe is up. Pepe plays an event. It's strategic territory, which I'm grateful I win over Nasty Michael's navigation because I did get this defense card from H3. So I didn't get a war, and I didn't get a tactic, but the defense card is good. And so I'm able to spend it right here with just a single swordsman to get this, and that actually raises my strength and gives me 5 cards, which is huge because getting 5 extra cards increases my odds of being able to go for military if I need to. All right, so Pepe now plays coal, which he should have done last time. He upgrades the coal. He grabs computers. The other computer showed up. 40 cards in the deck, and the other computers shows up. So that was heartbreaking for me, but it's also why, you don't base your decisions off of hate drafts. I gambled, and I wasted 2 actions, basically, because Pepe gets the computers anyway. Well, I spent 2 actions. He now spends 3 to take computers instead of getting it for 1, so I cost each of us 2 actions, while Nasty Michael is making off like a bandit, because he gets the benefit from both of us wasting 2 actions apiece, but he didn't have to do anything for it. All right, he upgrades another mine. He takes tanks. And then he passes the turn. All right, so once again, it goes over to me. And I have to make the choice. Am I still trying to win this game by culture, just turning resources into culture, or am I trying to go for a military win? Well, here I have a war over culture. The problem is I don't have military actions, and military theory is not here. So it is difficult for me, and I still, by the way, don't have a tactic. So unless I try to brute force it with just hussars, which I guess is not impossible, every 10 rocks equals 10 strength. It's not impossible. I could try to do that. I have enough workers. I could go for it. So I could try to do it with hussars, but that is a very inefficient way to field an army. So I decide here we're going to keep on going for culture. Yeah, Nasty Michael's making more rocks than he used to, and his culture lead is widened because Cook died, and he's about to finish the Louvre, which is going to give him an extra 5 culture per turn. But I still thought, right or wrong, going for military was just not going to be effective. So I play my Impact of Architecture. We get this. Nasty Michael loses a civil action and a military action. He gets 2 blue tokens back. And now how do I progress my culture generation? Well, I take Chaplain. I play him. That's 3 culture because I already have an Age 2 theater. And now I raise population and I build another theater. So I'm pushing as hard as I can here. I spent 1 swordsman to get that last colony, so I raise population another time, and I build it back. Now, that is something I do with a heavy heart, because it means the revolutionary idea goes to Nasty Michael, and he desperately needs science. He's only got 9 science. So if he doesn't get this revolutionary idea, he has to wait a long time before he can get modern infantry and like anything else. But with revolutionary idea, he'll be able to perhaps get modern infantry with his actual science and then still get a boost up on some other key technology like warfare or even an airplane. So I really hate leaving that there, but well, that's what I get. That's what I get for choosing to put the developed territory into play from Suez Canal and letting the autonomous territory, which gives 2 extra actions, 1 of each type, into the deck. I would have loved an extra military action as well. It would have given me extra card draws, and the civil action matters every single turn, so that was a learning moment for me. But in any case, that's my turn, and we go over to Nasty Michael. One minor point I should make here, I did throw away my armed interventions, and I think that was a mistake. I should have definitely kept an armed intervention. That's the one that lets you steal 7 culture from somebody, which is a 14-point swing against them and a 7-point swing against your other opponent. That would have been extremely helpful in this game. All right, Nasty Michael's up. He takes the revolutionary idea, obviously. He also grabs military buildup for, what is this, like 10 free rocks? Yep, 10 free rocks as long as he's dead last. He grabs an urban growth. He grabs oil. He just doesn't have much to do here on this particular turn, so he's just taking a bunch of cards. He does build a knight to get another medieval army, so that's me inflicting some pressure on him, but now he is in revolt, so how is he going to deal with that? Well, he takes a patriotism, he blows up a mine to stop the revolt, and then he does, in fact, build the final stage of the Louvre, going up to 14 culture per turn. So now I'm making 11, he's making 14, and he hasn't made these yet. He's actually at 99 culture, so he's 10 ahead of me and making 3 more per turn, so it's getting a little bit serious here. And he makes, I'm going to call this the biggest blunder of the game. He puts Classic Army into play. So I want to talk about what this is. We're going to get that text to move first, and then we're going to talk about why that was a big mistake, and it was a very educational mistake. So before he plays the Classic Army, Nasty Michael has Medieval Army. He has 2 of them. 2 times 2 is 4. When he plays Classic Army, it's outdated because the warriors are HA, and this is an H2 tactic. So he's getting the lower value, which is 4. So it goes from 4 to 4. His strength does not go up. Now what this does is it puts it into circulation 1 turn sooner. Pepe and I cannot copy this for our next turns, but starting in Pepe's next turn from now and mine, we can copy the Classic Army, which is kind of crazy for Lord Michael to do because I already have a Classic Army and my hussars are worth 4. So I'm getting 4 strength by switching to a Classic Army, and Pepe, he's got the goods. He's got the rocks, and he's got the techs already in place and the workers to make a Classic Army. So he's giving us a bunch of free strength, and there was no need to do this. The only time you'd ever do this is if it's like, oh, well, you spend the military action now because if you wait, you're not going to have enough military actions. But that's not the case. He has revolutionary idea. He can get modern infantry next turn. Upgrade, that's 2 military actions. Play Classic Army. That's 3. He can wait a whole extra turn at least before he plays this Classic Army. There was no reason for him to give this critical H2 military technology while we're in H3 that, Pepe and I have no chance of getting, and giving us an option to get a whole lot of strength that we wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. All right, he passes the turn, and it is over to Pepe. So Pepe develops computers and breaks my heart. He upgrades a lab, so now Marie Curie, she's on. She's got 3 culture, 3 strength, 2 science. Plus now he's beating me on, of course, the impact of science. And there's pretty much very minimal way, other than with multimedia, to get that back. So he takes an urban growth. He takes movies to generate culture, because right now he has no way of generating culture. He plays reserves for 4 rocks. That's the reserves that he took instead of researching coal and upgrading coal a turn earlier. He takes another reserves, and then he ends the turn. All right, so once again, we have the choice. It's H3. Do I go for military or do I go for culture? Well, it's not actually super clear. The way that this works is once I click play, these cards show up. And also, I take my first turn. So I don't want to do that. I want to be able to talk about it before I show what it is. One of these 4 cards ends up being the internet. The internet is not great for my opponents. As you can see, it would be like 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 points for Nasty Michael. And Pepe. Pepe's a bit better off. Note that Marie Curie's culture is tied to her. It's not tied to the building. So her lab just makes 5 science. So this is 5, 6, 7. So the internet is worth single digits for both of my opponents. Obviously, they can improve it further, but their rocks are not as good as mine, and these buildings are expensive. So the internet is uniquely good for me, and there's multimedia here. So I could take multimedia, research multimedia, build, or raise the population, build a multimedia, 4 actions, boom. I've got now 14 culture, 10 science. I would actually be beating Pepe until Pepe upgraded the other lab, which Pepe's probably going to want to do at some point. But, you know, I would have a shot maybe with the multimedia science of getting culture and science at the same time and still winning impact of science, and then I'd be making a pretty hefty internet. So internet is the sum of all the science and culture generated by your urban building. So it's, since these are all 3, these are 3 science, these are 3 culture, it's 3, 6, 9, 12, chaplain is another 15. This is 16, and multimedia, each of those is 6, so it's like 22. It's a pretty big wonder, and maybe that would have been the way to go. Maybe just, you know, kind of stay close to Nasty Michael, get further ahead of Pepe, and build the internet, and try to win that way. I think that may have been a reasonable plan. I'm not exactly sure what persuaded me not to do it, but I decided to go for a war here. Now, the reason is that I think that Nasty Michael's ability to like raise his army is really limited. It sucks that he has this revolutionary idea, because if he didn't, he actually wouldn't even be able to research modern infantry right now. So obviously I wish I kind of had taken that revolutionary idea. Then he'd be stuck with an antiquated classic army. But even with the revolutionary idea, he is still not able to catch up to me. So I decide we're gonna be doing a war. Now I can't really do the war right now. I mean, I could, but it wouldn't be great. Right now, I'm not able to get the classic army yet. But I commit, essentially, to declaring war on him next turn. So what I do is I play an event. We get this, which is whatever. And then I take the fundamentalism. I play it. I'm basically giving up on winning impact of science, because fundamentalism lowers your science production by 2, which is super sad. But I get 6 strength. I fix some military actions. I raise population twice. I build more hussars. And then what to do with my last actions? I should probably take this revolutionary idea to stop my intended war target from being able to take it. But I decide to play the reserves and build a swordsman. Now, this wasn't necessary to do. Like, it was not necessary for me to use this military action in advance. Next turn, I'm going to be spending 3 military actions to declare the war. But as we'll see, having an extra swordsman doesn't actually change anything. I should have, instead of playing the reserves to make the swordsman, just taken the revolutionary idea away from my intended war target. So a bit of a misstep there. But I passed the turn. I got a huge strength lead. Now, one benefit of this line is that now my opponents are very nervous, and they can't just, you know, devote resources to culture happily and gleefully, because they need to respect this military difference. So how do they handle the increased pressure? Well, Nasty Michael decides to put the Empire State Building into construction. I do think this is a misguided move, and he pays for it in the end. He takes the revolutionary idea, researches modern infantry, he grabs some rockets, he plays the military buildup for 10 free rocks, and he upgrades both of his warriors from Age A all the way to modern infantry in Age 3, and he gets up to 25 respectable strength. He also grabs the revolutionary idea that I left him, because I'm an idiot, and he passes the turn. At least his culture stayed the same level, and he's still a ways behind me here. Pepe's up. He plays reserves, gets 4 rocks. He builds riflemen, he researches tanks, and then he makes a tank. And that's a canny move for reasons that we'll see in a bit. With this and the switch to a classic army, he goes up to 29 strength. So in the old adage of, you know, if you're running away from a bear with a friend, you don't have to outrun the bear, you have to just outrun your friend. He's just trying to be a less appealing target than Nasty Michael. He then upgrades his second lab, grabs an engineering genius, which is rather speculative, but there's not much else to do here, and he takes engineering to go with his engineering genius, and then he passes the turn. Again, I'm going to try to pause this at just the perfect time. Okay, so it's my turn. This is going to be my last turn in Age 3. And it is time to commit to the bit. I have to declare war. Now the question is, who do I declare war against? And this is one of those things where like, well, obviously Nasty Michael, he's got less strength. But I think in Through the Ages, if you make obvious moves, then, you know, you're gonna be wrong sometimes. It is important to choose your targets. Pepe has 4 more strength, but he's also kind of got his pants down. He only has 7 rocks, and he doesn't have any yellow cards that help with military. So, by contrast, Nasty Michael has a whopping 16 plus 4 is 20 rocks available. And, you know, that's a lot of rocks. He also has 4 military actions equal to Pepe's. It is worth considering declaring war on Pepe here. The problem is that Pepe was very savvy and built this tank. And what that means is that if Rockets shows up, he can take Rockets, research Rockets, he has exactly enough rocks to make a rocket, and then he can play the Modern Army. And if he plays the Modern Army, which I unfortunately have not seen either copy of, he would go from 8 strength to 13. So that would be a 5 strength increase plus 5 strength from the Rockets is 10, and then he has the Himeji Castle. He could then sacrifice his tank or his rocket to get another 8 strength. So that's 5, 10, plus 8 is 18. 29 plus 18 is 47. I'm going to be at 51 here, so that's a really thin value. And also, if an event pops up, always consider events, he could overtake me further. One thing to note is that the events in here were both played by Pepe, and who knows what he's putting in there. So the critical ones to think about, which I have not seen in this game, are the economic progress, which allows, well, which just generates rocks. And the way that is that whenever you declare war, if economic progress is flipped subsequently, your opponent that you declared against gets the benefit of those extra resources, but you don't. In addition, you always have to consider freedom of movement. It allows someone to like swap a lab into an Age 3 military unit, which is, you know, potentially significant. So because of this, I actually might end up losing the war against Pepe. So I thought about it, but I decided, okay, we got to go against Nasty Michael. So I declare war on him. I didn't really talk about this much last time, but the plan was that in this deck, there are 2 air forces and there are 2 military theories. At the time I declared the war, neither of them was visible. It was pretty likely that one of them would show up. If an air force showed up, I could actually research it, and with these reserves, make 2 air forces, each of which would be worth 9 strength. Because 5 for the Air Force plus 4 for the Hussars. That would be 18 strength added to my 36 for a total of 54. If military theory shows up, it's not quite as good, but it is important because notice that with the airplanes, I can get a huge benefit just by using my Hussars. But the military theory line requires there to be this classic army, because with military theory, I can research it, that gives me extra military actions. With these, I am able to steal the classic army and still make more swordsmen. If the airplanes had shown up, I would have had only 5 military actions. I spent 3 to declare war. It leaves me with only 2. I'm not able to make an airplane and switch to classic army, tragically. That's why I'd be building 2 airplanes in that case. Now, this is why I did not have to build a swordsman last time. I mean, I had military actions to spend here. Even after I swapped to the classic army, I still have 2 extra ones. I could have used one of them now to make another sword, so I would have been more than able to stop Nasty Michael from getting a revolutionary idea. And that's a big deal because with this revolutionary idea, he bumps over the critical 12 science barrier, and so if military theory or airplanes shows up, he is going to be able to take advantage of it. I would still win the war, but I'm winning it by more if he does not do that. So that's why it was important for me to stop that from happening. As it is, though, I'm at 51, so a bit less than with the airplanes line, but still good enough to win the war and steal a bunch of culture. I also take the internet under construction. That was something I thought about a lot, because I could just take multimedia and then build multimedias and try to win the science. But the thing is, I just thought it's impossible. There's just no way I can win the science. I do have the raid, and I might be able to raid Pepe. But unfortunately, the way raid works, even the Age 3 raid, is one Age 3 building and then one other building that's lower than Age 3. So I can knock off 6 of his science, take him down to 7, and yeah, then with multimedia, I'm kind of beating him just ever so slightly. But the problem then is that if he just simply rebuilds it, then, you know, I end up losing it anyways. So it was worth considering because he can't rebuild it right now. These cost 11 rocks. With engineering, they cost 8. He still can't quite do it. So there's a chance I could have actually snuck it through. One of these cards is my Impact of Science. So it's possible I should have gone for that plan. But I went for the internet instead. It's worth a decent chunk of points. It's, in the high teens. It's a, decent sized wonder. And I was hoping that would just be enough. So I pass the turn here, and we go to Nasty Michael. How does he react to the war? Well, he plays an event. It's this, which is great. It gives me 8 points against Nasty Michael and 4 against Pepe, so I'm thrilled to bits. He then grabs Pro Sports, researches it, fixes his happy faces, and gets, 4 strength from these guys? 4 strength, yep. Then he plays the Patriotism, builds a Modern Infantry, and he grabs reserves. Now, one thing to note is that he could have raised population and built another sword. So then he would have, gotten 2 extra points against Pepe and 4 extra points against me. But it's not, a huge deal by any means. He just didn't choose to do that. He just chose to get these reserves. And this allows him to build the Empire State Building on his last turn of the game, which is important because, 4 plus 6 is 10. 10 plus 6 from Louvre is 16. He's 1 rock away from doing that if he doesn't take these reserves. So that may have been why he didn't want to raise his population. But as we'll see, it's still not great, because if he's only winning on one thing, it's only 8 culture, and that's not really that big of a deal, but it's what he decided to do. All right, so Pepe is now pretty far behind me. What is he going to do? He's going to play an event. It's refugees, which he put in there, and I'm grateful he did, because that gives me a 6-point swing against him and 3 points against Nasty Michael. Also, I raise population. He then develops engineering, grabs the airplanes to help his shadow army, grabs patriotism for the same purpose, grabs efficient upgrade, and then he raises population. He could have upgraded this last lab, but I suspect... I'm actually not sure why he didn't upgrade that last lab. Maybe he just didn't need it, is the thing. It doesn't technically do anything if he's not using any of this, all the science anyways. So maybe he just thought it wasn't worth it. But there's not going to be a war because we're getting into age 4, so I can't declare war on him. He doesn't need more Shadow Army stuff. I'm actually not even, I'm not sure why he's doing this, because the game's about to end. The only thing I could do against him is do an aggression. So I'm actually not sure why he spent all these resources doing this stuff. It could just be that he didn't have anything better to do. He can't make a movies. He's 1 rock. Well, if he researches movies, he can't research engineering. And if he doesn't research engineering, there are 11 rocks to build. I mean, maybe he just had nothing better to do this turn. So anyway, that's what he did. And we passed the turn. And it's over to me. So now I got to think about what to do with my final action here in age 4. I could play an event. Neither of these is that great. And so what I decide to do is I decide to blow up Pepe's labs. It drops his science by 6 because he did leave this age A lab here. So that drops it to 7. And if I build a lab here, I go up to 8. And then these events, if my opponents both play an event, then the Impact of Science is guaranteed to show up, and I'm going to steal 14 points from Pepe. Now, I made this move. Something was going on in my life. Like, nothing bad or sad. It's just like, I decided to multitask and sneak this in here while other things are going on. So I kind of screwed up this last turn, unfortunately. What I did here was I did the raid on Pepe. Then you have to, wait in real time for him to respond. And then by the time that he came back, I blew up his labs. Okay. And then I just, forgot what I was doing. So I built an opera instead of building a scientific method. So this gives me an extra 3 points, but I failed to steal 14 points from Pepe. So it's kind of like I'm handing Pepe 11 points on a silver platter, which is a little bit silly of me. But then I build the internet, and that's all I have time to do. One other funny thing I did is I blew up a mine to get my worker for the opera, instead of raising my population with my food. I just thought I was in the 7 area, but I had so many defense tokens from my colonies. I was actually still here even after age 4 triggered, so that was kind of silly. Anyway, I have 5 rocks left over, and I built a course because I had put Impact of Competition in there, so that was basically spending a military action to get 2 points. And that's it. Now, Nasty Michael, you'll notice, is in kind of a weird spot here. He has 14 culture, so he's not winning on the Empire State Building, but even if he were, it doesn't matter, because the Louvre rocks are not removed instantaneously. You have to, remove them as an action. It doesn't cost a civil action, so it's a free action, but it's not instantaneous. You can't be like, I'm building this, and I'm removing my Louvre rocks to do it. So that means that every time he collects 2 rocks from one of these blue tokens, his culture rating actually goes down by 1. So even if I weren't at 14, he still would not have been able to get more than 8 points from the Empire State Building. He still would not have actually been winning on culture. The reason I bring this up is because I was supposed to build a lab to go up to 8 science. Then I would have been at 11 culture. But even at 11 culture, he would not have gotten the points from the Empire State Building for being ahead on culture, because you would have had to lose 3 points. And with the Empire State Building, you lose ties. You have to break the tie to be considered the highest in a category. It's also kind of weird. He takes Churchill, which gives 3 culture, but he could have taken Jobs. And you can pay a rock to get 4 points when you research a technology. So just like a little miss there. He could have done this and gotten 4 culture. So you could have gotten 1 extra culture. And also, Steve Jobs gives you happy faces. Your best lab gives you happy faces equal to its level, which would have been 1 happy face. So if impact of happiness is in there, it's actually worth 2 points. So it's 2 points for the happy face plus another 1 from 4 versus 3. That could have been up to 3 more culture than Winston Churchill, and it was 1 extra culture at minimum plus 1 fewer civil action. So that was a little miss there. But he takes Churchill, he plays him, he grabs the revolutionary idea, he plays the reserves, he spends all his blue tokens. Notice how he goes down to 11. Churchill's 3 do not count as culture. So they do not help you win the Empire State Building, and then he builds it, and he has 1 rock left over that could have been used with Steve Jobs to research a tech. Oh, but Boris, what if he doesn't research a tech? Well, no, he takes military theory and he researches it, which makes sense. This is good for impact of progress and impact of actions, and it helps, Pepe, helps prevent Pepe from stealing if there's like an impact of strength in there. Oh yeah, and also impact of technology for age 3 technologies, but of course any one of these would have done for that. So he does that. He was going to research a tech no matter what, and it's over to Pepe's final turn. Pepe plays an event. There's the impact of science, which I could have stolen from him if I had just built a lab instead of a theater. He develops movies, makes a movie. Luckily, impact of architecture has come and gone, so he's not getting the extra 3 points for that. He plays patriotism. He upgrades a knight to a tank. He upgrades a mine to a coal mine. He builds a temple, which is actually critical. I think Pepe put impact of culture in there. And notice he's like stealing it. He's sneaking it out there. After being behind on culture generation all game, he sneaks it out right at the end. So that's, that's your last player advantage working there for you. And then he's got nothing to do with the last 2 actions, and he passes the turn. So into the events we go. Impact of competition gives Nasty Michael a little bit of a leg up, almost catching up to Pepe. But then impact of culture gives Pepe a 14-point lead over Nasty Michael. So Nasty Michael's attempts to get second are thwarted there. But then impact of progress happens. That military theory comes in hot. All right, Nasty Michael catches up a little bit. And then we got the impact of government. That's another 3 points. So the military theory was huge. That was 6 for progress and another 3. That was 9 points all in one swoop there. So next another 4 points here. And then we got the impact of variety. That extra temple gives Pepe another 2 points, but Nasty Michael beats him on that as well. So he's only 7 points behind. That Crusades that gave Pepe 8 points over Nasty Michael makes the difference here. And also, if I had stolen the impact of science from Pepe, these guys would have tied. And since Pepe is the best player in the group, that means even though it didn't actually matter because I had a pretty convincing victory here, that mistake from the tournament standpoint could actually be significant. Because if Pepe is the best player, I want him to tie instead of having a clear second so that he gets fewer points, because that could affect ultimately what happens in the standings. But in any case, it ended up being a pretty good game. There were a couple of key moments back when I was leaning on Nostradamus like a cane, where there was a slight chance that maybe I could get overwhelmed by military, but or just fall behind. My ability to build the canal and do some other thing. I think research horses all hinged on winning a colony when the colony came up and my opponents didn't stop me. So even though it looked like it was a convincing victory in the end, I think this was actually a very close game. One slight downturn earlier and I could have been completely screwed, but I was happy to pull it out. I was happy to break the curse of getting dead last in 3-player games in this tournament, and then I'm excited to see what happens in the remaining 3-player games. Those are still happening, so it'll be, a few days to a week before I can make a video for those, but I hope to see you for that. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and or subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.